Ignoring early symptoms. Fungal plant diseases like powdery mildew and rust are classic garden killers. Powdery mildew, a plant issue recorded as far back as 300 BC by the ancient Greeks, starts as just a few tiny white specks. Rust shows up as small orange bumps on the undersides of leaves. People often ignore these small marks, but fungi multiply incredibly fast. Within just a few days of humid weather, those single spots explode into millions of spores. Soon the fungus completely coats the leaves in a thick white dust or a rusty powder. This blocks out the sun and completely stops the plant from doing photosynthesis. The leaves yellow, shrivel, and drop off. Waiting until a plant looks like it was dusted with flour makes it almost impossible to save. You have to treat the plant immediately if you want it to survive. Overhead watering habits. Overhead watering is exactly what it sounds like. You take a hose or a sprinkler and spray water right down over the top of your plants. People have been doing this heavily since the impact sprinkler became popular on farms in the 1930s. It seems like a fast way to get the job done. But when you water from above, the water cascades down and coats the leaves. Drops pool in the little grooves of the foliage and just sit there. This creates a tiny, highly humid microclimate. When moisture lingers on a plant for more than 6 to 12 hours, fungal spores flying through the air land in those puddles and germinate. Before long, you see fuzzy white spots or dark blotches spreading across the leaves. This still matters today because simply watering at the soil level stops these spores from ever waking up, keeping your plants green and alive. Reusing infected soil. Reusing infected soil means putting healthy young plants into dirt where a disease like late blight or fusarium wilt recently destroyed your crop. When sick plants die, the fungi do not leave. They drop spores deep into the dirt. Some pathogens can sleep in the ground for over 5 years. If you put the same plant back into that dirt, the spores wake up. The fungi swim through the wet earth, invade the roots, and clog the plant's veins. You will quickly see the leaves turn yellow, wilt, and fall off as the plant starves. Historically, ignoring this worsened disasters like the 1840s potato blight. To fix this, farmers use crop rotation to plant different vegetables there. They also use soil solarization, putting clear plastic tarps over wet dirt to bake the earth up to 140 degrees. This practice still matters today to keep our food supply safe from sudden outbreaks. Plant overcrowding. This is what happens when you pack too many plants into a single space. Ever since the agricultural revolution in the 18th century, farmers have tried planting crops closer together to maximize their harvests. But cramming plants together causes a major problem. It completely blocks the wind. Without fresh air moving through the stems, humidity gets trapped near the soil. This creates a damp, sticky environment. When leaves are shoved up against each other, they act like a physical bridge. If one leaf catches a fungal infection, the spores easily walk right across that bridge to the next plant. You will suddenly see a whole row of green plants covered in white, powdery mildew or turning brown from rot. Giving crops enough room to breathe is still the easiest way to keep our food supply healthy. Late fungicide application. Ever since French farmers started dusting grapevines with a copper-based Bordeaux mixture in the 1880s, people have relied on chemical sprays to stop plant diseases. But most garden fungicides are preventative, not curative. They work like an invisible shield on the outside of the leaf. You have to spray the plant before the disease arrives. When a stray fungal spore lands on that treated leaf, it simply cannot sprout. If you wait until a massive outbreak is already happening, the fungus is already living deep inside the plant tissue. You will spray the leaves, but the fuzzy patches and dark spots will keep spreading. The foliage will still turn yellow, shrivel up, and drop to the ground. You just wasted your time and money. This still matters because knowing when to spray keeps you from dumping useless chemicals into your backyard. Dirty pruning tools. Using unwashed shears is a guaranteed way to infect your garden. Back in the late 19th century, botanists finally realized that the new germ theory applied to plants just as much as humans. A contaminated blade carries microscopic threats. When you snip off a branch suffering from something like fire blight or powdery mildew, the sticky plant sap coats your metal clippers. Fungal spores and bacteria cling to the steel. If you walk right over to a healthy shrub and make another cut without wiping the blade, you push those invisible spores directly into the fresh plant tissue. You are basically injecting the healthy plant with a disease. A few weeks later, you will see the new growth turning black, wilting, or breaking out in fungal spots. That is why taking a few seconds to wipe your tools with 70% rubbing alcohol still matters to keep your entire garden alive. Excess nitrogen fertilizer. Synthetic nitrogen changed farming forever when it was invented in the early 1900s, giving crops the ultimate growth fuel. But if you dump too much into the soil, the plant goes into overdrive. It rushes to push out new green leaves as fast as possible. Because it grows so fast, the plant never takes the time to build strong, thick cell walls. You end up with giant, dark green leaves that are completely soft and floppy. This tender new tissue is a perfect target for disease. Fungal spores land on these weak leaves and easily punch right through the thin skin, triggering severe outbreaks of powdery mildew and rust. It still matters today because it proves that forcing unnatural, rapid growth creates fragile plants that just cannot survive in the real world. Misidentifying fungal pathogens. This is the common mistake of seeing spots or rot on a plant and automatically assuming a fungus is to blame. Back in the mid-19th century, scientists proved fungi caused devastating plant diseases, which changed agriculture forever. Because of this history, modern growers often grab a fungicidal spray the second they notice wilting or spotting leaves. But bacteria, viruses, and tiny pests like spider mites cause almost identical damage. If you spray a fungicide on a plant actually suffering from a bacterial infection, like fire blight, or a viral issue like tomato spotted wilt, the treatment does absolutely nothing. The disease just keeps spreading. The leaves continue to turn yellow, the stems rot away, and the plant eventually collapses under a useless chemical bath. This matters today because treating the wrong pathogen wastes valuable time and lets the real threat easily destroy the crop. Composting diseased leaves. This is the practice of tossing fungus-infected plant debris into your backyard compost bin. People have been recycling garden waste into fertilizer for thousands of years, turning dead plants into rich soil. But standard home compost piles rarely get hot enough to handle sickness. A typical backyard bin might reach 110 degrees. But to completely kill stubborn fungal spores, the pile actually needs to sit at 140 degrees or higher for several days. When you toss infected leaves into a normal pile, the fungi just go dormant. Later on, you spread that finished compost around your yard. You think you are feeding your garden, but you are actually spreading living spores right back onto your healthy plants. The fresh leaves will soon sprout the exact same spots and rot. This matters because keeping sick debris out of your pile is the only sure way to stop garden diseases from coming back year after year. Inconsistent treatment schedules. This is what happens when you miss the planned days for spraying fungicides on your crops. Ever since the 1880s, when French farmers first used Bordeaux mixture to save their grapes from mildew, timing has been everything. Preventative sprays work by creating a chemical shield over the plant. As the crop grows, fresh leaves sprout rapidly. If you stretch a strict 7 to 14-day schedule into 3 weeks, that new growth is completely exposed. Moisture rolls in, and microscopic spores land and germinate in just a few hours. Soon you walk out to the field and see the fresh green shoots covered in fuzzy white patches or dark rotting spots. The fungus has bounced back, rendering your previous preventative treatments completely useless. Sticking to a tight schedule still matters today because stopping a fungal rebound is always much harder than preventing it. Using expired fungicides. A fungicide is meant to prevent or kill fungal diseases on your plants, but these treatments have a strict shelf life. Since the mass production of synthetic garden chemicals took off in the mid-20th century, manufacturers have stamped expiration dates on bottles for a reason. Most liquid fungicides only last about 2 to 3 years. After that, the active ingredients chemically break down. If it is a biological treatment, the living microbes simply die inside the plastic jug. When you mix up an old batch, you are basically just spraying your plants with water and inert fillers. Out in the garden, fungal spores will land on the wet leaves and spread just as fast as if you did nothing. Keeping fresh treatments on hand matters because an unexpected rainy week will ruin your plants before you realize the old spray failed. Blocking natural airflow. When you leave a plant's inner canopy completely overgrown, you accidentally create a damp, stagnant trap. The main issue here is trapped humidity. Every morning, dew naturally settles on your plants. If the middle is a thick wall of leaves, the wind cannot pass through to dry off that moisture. Early agriculturalists, like 19th century European grape growers, quickly figured out that vines packed too closely together were always the first to lose their crops to disease. When water sits on the stems and humidity levels above 85%, it creates the perfect breeding ground for fungal spores like botrytis. You will start seeing fuzzy gray mold or white powdery spots eating away at the core of the plant. Snipping away those inner leaves keeps the air moving and the stems dry, which is still the absolute best way to keep your garden alive today. Treating only foliage. This is the common mistake of only spraying the top sides of a plant's leaves when applying treatments. When people grab a spray bottle, they usually point it right down at the green canopy. But ever since the 1880s, when farmers first started using copper sprays to save French vineyards from mildew, experts have known that fungi do not just sit on top of the plant. Spores actually hide in the soil around the base. When it rains, drops hit the dirt and splash those microscopic spores up onto the shaded undersides of the lower leaves. If you only coat the top canopy, the disease just continues to spread unseen below. The leaves will eventually yellow, develop spots, and drop off. That is why treating the leaf undersides and the surrounding dirt remains the only way to truly stop the infection. The microbiome fix. The ultimate way to protect your plants is by building healthy, living soil. In the mid-20th century, agriculture started relying heavily on chemical sprays, which actually stripped the dirt of its natural defenses. But real soil is packed with life. A single teaspoon of healthy dirt holds up to 1 billion bacteria and miles of fungal threads. When you add compost and organic matter to the ground, you feed an army of good microbes. These friendly organisms physically surround plant roots and snatch up all the available food and space. When bad, disease-causing fungi try to move in and cause rot, they simply starve to death. They cannot get a foothold, so your plants stay green and vibrant without constant chemical treatments. Cultivating this invisible underground ecosystem creates a permanent shield, making it the ultimate lasting solution for any grower.